Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me here for today's Produce Spotlight class. My name is Charlotte Schein. I'm one of the Giant Company dietitians. We have a wonderful produce item for today, which I always think is really great for, especially for the Thanksgiving season, the holiday season. But we are going to be featuring grapes today. So I want to hear from all of you if you do already eat grapes. Let me pull up that poll for today. And again, just would love to hear from all of you. Basically, do you eat grapes? So you can say yes or no. I will say that I definitely love grapes. And one of my favorite ways to eat grapes, the red grapes, is to incorporate it into a Southern chicken salad. So with rotisserie chicken, sometimes I'll do Greek yogurt or mayo with some green onion, the grapes, and then pecans, which is super delicious. And I always think grapes give it a nice crunch. All right, so let me go ahead and end the poll. We'll share the results. So it looks like a lot of you already are eating grapes, which is really great. And for those of you who are not, hopefully this class today will inspire you to do so because there's so much that you can do with grapes and they're very delicious, especially this time of year. So thanks everybody for answering that question. All right. So our agenda for today, we are first going to be just doing a grape true or false, which of course with any produce spotlight class I always like to do to kind of test your knowledge. We are going to be talking a little bit about the California grapes, which is our dietitian's pick for the month of November. We're going to go over the nutritional benefits of grapes, how to choose and store them, how to use grapes. You can of course use them as a snack, but there's a lot of variety of ways to use them, like what I just said with the chicken salad. Some great pairings, different flavor combinations that go really well with grapes, some recipe inspirations from our Savory magazine, and then I'm going to be making a delicious recipe, which I have made before a few times, but it's the California grape and goat cheese crotinis, which is super easy to make, but a lot of great flavor with that one. So first we're going to start with our grape, true or false. And instead of doing a poll, you can just kind of think true or false in your head. But the first one is the first grape varieties date as far back as 4000 BC. So I'll give everybody a couple seconds to think about it. So again, the first grape varieties date as far back as 4000 BC. And so this one is actually false. And it's because the first grape varieties date as far back as 6000 BC. So they have been around for quite a long time. All right, next one. Over 99% of grapes commercially grown in the United States come from California. So true or false, again, just think about it. And we'll give everybody a couple of seconds. So again, over 99% of grapes commercially grown in the United States come from California. So let's see what the answer is. So this is true. So the majority of grapes are grown in California, and a lot of different colors as well, which we'll be discussing in a little bit. So there are more than 80 varieties of grapes grown in California and are available between May and January. So true or false. So again, more than 80 varieties, which I always think is a lot of varieties. So grown in California and are available May through January. So this time of year, again, perfect for holidays. So for this one, answer is true. So a lot of different varieties of grapes grown in California and are grown this time of year. So they're super delicious right now. And our last one. So research has shown that grape consumption helps protect brain neurons from oxidative damage and decreases inflammation, which of course we know can be beneficial to a variety of conditions. So true or false? So again, research shown that grape consumption helps with brain health, so brain neurons from oxidative damage and decreases inflammation. So this one is true, and that is just a tiny bit of research of the many different research stuff that's going on with grapes. So they are so many different nutritional benefits that have already been shown, but a lot of great research that's going on right now with grapes as well, which we'll go over in a little bit. All right, so let's talk a little bit about California grapes. So California grapes are our dietitian's pick for the month of November. I don't know if anybody was or attended class yesterday with Jenna in Florida Fork, but she also featured California grapes in her recipe yesterday. And so if you want to rewatch her class or have missed her class, we will send that link in the follow-up email. But so we're going to be featuring California grapes, and again, our dietitian's pick for this month, which is super exciting. So California table grapes are harvested, like what I mentioned before, so May through December or January, so kind of in the growing regions of the Coachella valleys. And I mentioned before, there's over 80 varieties, so over 89 varieties are grown. And again, 99% of commercially grown table grapes are grown in California, so a lot of great production in California. So 3 colors, so we have our green, red, and black, and a lot of great nutritional benefits with all of those. But like what I mentioned before, grapes are a really nice, versatile ingredient. And I always think, especially when I make my chicken salad that I like, it really adds that nice juicy burst of flavor. And of course, gives it a crunch to many different types of dishes. And again, especially with this time of year, with Thanksgiving coming up, grapes always make for a nice, putting it into an appetizer or a charcuterie board or those types of things. And when going back to research, so I mentioned that there was research with brain health, but there's a lot of great research going on saying that table grape consumption supports heart, gut, immune, and brain health as well, and also healthy aging. So a lot of great benefits with that. So we know that grapes are a great source of antioxidants, and then those polyphenols, which are those plant compounds that give grapes the color, but a lot of great health benefits with the polyphenols. And just want to mention too, so this Friday, Jenna, and the Feature Friday class is going to be talking all about California grapes. So a lot of great information in that class. But that's what we're going to be using today in our recipe and talking about is the California grapes. So let's talk a little bit about the nutritional benefits. So we know that there's great research going on with it, but just to bring it down to the basics. So about 3/4 of a cup is 90 calories. Does provide vitamin K, so 18% of the daily value in 1 cup. So we know that vitamin K is really important for bone health. Also, research studies on heart health. So studies have shown that eating a variety of different grapes promotes the relaxation of blood vessels to help maintain that blood flow, helps to lower blood pressure. Also, it's a naturally rich in antioxidants and polyphenols, which we mentioned before. So polyphenols helped, give the grapes the color, but polyphenols are in all of the grapes. So in the skin, flesh, and seeds. So we know that with antioxidants and polyphenols, it helps to protect the health and function of our cells. And also the polyphenols help to promote that antioxidant activity, and also helps to influence cell-to-cell communication. So really important that we, in our diets, of course, have polyphenols for a variety of health benefits. And also going back to brain health, research has also shown that grapes may protect against metabolic decline in the brain that's associated with natural aging. There's also some research going on with Alzheimer's as well, with grapes being beneficial for, not having that condition. So in terms of heart health, again, naturally rich in antioxidants and polyphenols, and then brain health, grapes are definitely a go-to for all those health benefits, which is super exciting. So how to choose and store. So when you do come to the store, we want to look for grapes with pliable stems and that are plump. So fresh grapes have kind of like a thick green and flexible stem. If they're brown or dry or kind of break easy, that usually means they're more mature and not as fresh. And then you want to look for a natural powdery coating called bloom. So what bloom is kind of a natural whitish film that protects grapes from moisture loss. So that's always a good thing to have when it has that bloom. Excuse me. We want to avoid grapes if they come in like the container or the package. If they have excessive moisture on them, I would not, buy those. Sometimes they can have maybe a little bit of mold on them if there's excessive moisture on them. Of course, we do not want dry stems, brown spots, or mold. So if you want to buy grapes in the store and bring them home, they can be stored in the refrigerator for up to 2 weeks. So we want to store them unwashed and dry, and then rinse right before serving, because we want to not have moisture in the refrigerator, because it kind of speeds up if it has more moisture, it could create mold, and that's something we don't want. We want to avoid storing grapes too if they are compressed or squeezed, so we don't want that extra moisture. And also to prevent odor absorption because grapes can sometimes absorb odor. We don't want to stir with onions or leeks because it will absorb that odor and flavor. And of course, we do not want that with the grape flavor. So these are just some tips on how to choose grapes and then store them as well. So how to use grapes. There's a variety of ways to use grapes. Of course, you can use them as a snack, which is super delicious, or you can incorporate them into different snacks and meals. For the first ones, you can incorporate it into a chicken or tuna salad, which is one of my favorite ways, which I mentioned. Also, a grain bowl you could do with quinoa, rotisserie chicken, and whatever dressing that you would like. It goes really well in a yogurt parfait or oatmeal topping, and different types of sandwiches or wraps. Adds that crunch and sweetness that is really delicious. You could do kebabs. Sometimes this can be a great snack wrap for kids. Kebabs with strawberries, grapes, bananas. And it they can make. I'm just gonna get a drink of water. One moment. So it makes for the kebabs a nice snack wrap for kids, so they can kind of get those cooking skills that are always good. You can incorporate into a smoothie. Again, with the Thanksgiving holiday, you can incorporate into a charcuterie board. And then frozen grapes too, especially if you have a sweet tooth. Sometimes frozen grapes, if you really want ice cream. And of course, I wouldn't say frozen grapes probably for kids, but for adults, if you have a sweet tooth and you want like ice cream or a popsicle, sometimes frozen grapes, I think, really do the trick because it gives you kind of like that icy, nice sweetness. So a variety of different ways to use grapes. And in terms of grape pairings, so there's a variety of different flavors that pair really well with grapes. So first with our proteins, things like chicken, salmon, or turkey. We of course have our salmon, Atlantic salmon individualized portions. That is really nice, especially for a sheet pan meal. So with grapes, of course, turkey, if you're incorporating into a sandwich. With produce, things like spinach or Brussels sprouts. There's a really great recipe with Brussels sprouts and grapes on Savory magazine website. Also things like banana and celery if you're incorporating it into some type of chicken salad. So we have our Brussels sprouts, packaged Brussels sprouts, you can see right there. In terms of herbs and spices, things like thyme, which we'll be using in our recipe today, rosemary, basil, and mint. And in terms of nuts and seeds, things like walnuts, almonds, pistachios, even pecans or pecans are really good. And then other different types of cheeses work well, like feta cheese, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, oatmeal, and then dark chocolates. This is our 1% cottage cheese right there. So a variety of different great pairings for grapes. And I should have put on here too, goat cheese is another one, which we'll be using in our recipe today. So if you're thinking about grapes, recipes, ways to kind of incorporate different flavors, these are some ideas. So these are some grape recipe inspirations from our Savory magazine. So you can always view any of these recipes online, which is really nice. So let me go to the first one. And this is our most recent Savory magazine right there. But again, you can always, these are in store, but you can always view these online. So the first one we had mentioned about salmon being a nice pairing. So this is a slow roasted salmon with grape salsa. So this gets 3 guiding stars, which we know that guiding stars is our nutritional navigation program. So the more stars that something has, the more nutritionally beneficial it is. So this has a lot of great nutrition in it. For one serving, 24 grams of protein. So really nice. So we have our salmon, and in the salsa, some olive oil. I'm gonna chop up some red grapes, some jalapeno, green onion, cilantro, red wine vinegar, and then garlic as the salsa, but really nice flavor combinations with this one. So if you're thinking for pairing some grapes with salmon, this is kind of a unique way to do so. And then we have, so I mentioned about Brussels sprouts and grapes recipe. So this is the one that I was referring to. So this gets 2 guiding stars. So 8 grams of protein, 8 grams of fiber. So with Brussels sprouts, so chop up some red grapes, a little bit of olive oil, honey, and walnuts. You can saute that and it's, with the sweetness and of course kind of cooking down the Brussels sprouts kind of creates that caramelization, which is really nice, but just kind of another way, because I think when we think of grapes, we don't always think of Brussels sprouts, but I know this time of year, Brussels sprouts is another one of my favorites. And then speaking of chicken salad, so this is a Waldorf chicken salad, which gets 2 guiding stars, 22 grams of protein, almost 4 grams of fiber. So what it has is 2 cups of shredded rotisserie chicken, which of course you can cook the chicken on your own and kind of shred it up, or you can purchase our shredded rotisserie chicken in store. So some chopped up grapes, some walnuts, celery, which I mentioned celery is a good pairing, some plain Greek yogurt, which adds a pop of protein, some mustard, red wine vinegar, honey, and then whatever mixed greens that you want. So this always makes too for a nice kind of lunch dish. But just another way, again, with the grapes, kind of adds a nice crunch and sweetness to this Waldorf chicken salad. And again, it's 2 guiding stars. All right, so this is our featured recipe. So again, this is the California grape and goat cheese Crostinis. I can pronounce that right. So this one, of course, utilizes goat cheese. So what I did before class, I just want to mention, so what I have right here is just our Nature's Promise baguette. So I kind of cut that in half and toasted it already. So we'll be cutting this up and then putting on some of our ingredients. And also before class, I took our green and red grapes and then I quartered them. So they're like a little bit smaller. And in a bowl here, we're going to incorporate some lemon juice, honey, some fresh thyme leaves, which I've already chopped up, a little bit of kosher salt, black pepper, and olive oil. We're going to mix that together, put back in the grapes, and then kind of stack different things on our baguette after it's cut up. So we're going to spread on the goat cheese and then our grape mixture after it's marinated. And I always think this makes for a really nice just like an appetizer again for Thanksgiving or the holiday season because it's super easy, but it's so, so delicious with all the different flavors going on. So again, we're just going to toss the lemon juice, honey, thyme, salt, pepper, and olive oil, and then spreading on the goat cheese on our baguette and then topping it with the grapes. All right, so let me stop sharing my screen and we will get started. All right. All right, so okay, so what I mentioned before, so I had toast, my baguette. So I'm just using her Nature's Promise French style baguette. I just kind of cut it in half and then cut it again lengthwise and just toasted it about 350 for maybe like 5 minutes or so, just to give it a little nice crunch. So actually, I'm going to bring over my bowl. So you can see here, I did quarter the green and red grapes, just right here. So after we create our marinade in here, we're going to be putting in the grapes. So the first thing I'm going to put in is two teaspoons of lemon juice. So I just squeeze fresh lemons. So you can see right here. So I'm just going to add that. 2 teaspoons of honey. So this is the honey that I'm using, just our brand honey. So I'll go ahead and add this. And then the next thing I'm going to do is 1 tablespoon of chopped thyme. So I just, usually the herbs are in our produce area. So I just use our Nature's Promise kind of packet of thyme. So you can see right here, kind of picked it apart. I did wash it and kind of chopped it up a little bit. So this is 1 tablespoon. So I'll put that in there. I'm going to do 1/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt. And I'm just going to kind of just put, I can kind of eye it a little bit. So I'll just put 1/4 of a teaspoon and then 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. This is probably a little too much. I'll just put kind of eye it a little bit. Okay. Then we're going to do 1 tablespoon of olive oil. So I'm just using our brand extra virgin olive oil. So let me go ahead and measure this out. So 1 tablespoon. All right. So put this in here. I'm just going to mix this up. And then we'll put in our, let's see here, the red and green grapes. All right, so it looks like that's really well mixed. So you can see right here. So that's our marinades. I'm just going to put in our green grapes that are already quartered. And we quarter them too, because if they're too big, even if you half them, they might not sit as well on the baguette. And then here are my quartered red grapes. Great, so put this to the side. So we're just going to put this in our marinade. Stir it up just until everything is well coated. Smells super delicious. All right, so here we go. So that's our grapes with the marinade. All right, so I have, so I just want to mention the goat cheese that I'm using is just our classic goat cheese. And you could probably do, there's a cranberry orange goat cheese that I think might pair well with this, but you can just use plain. So I'm just gonna cut my baguette. All right, just kind of, this kind of size. We're going to spread on our goat cheese. And I did leave this out for maybe like 20 minutes or so because when you pull it right out of the refrigerator, it's kind of hard and not as easy to spread. But I left this out for maybe like 20 minutes, so it is a little bit softer, which makes it a little bit easier. So I'm just going to do 3 of these. So we'll spread this on. You don't necessarily have to toast the bread either, but again, with kind of spreading stuff on, it makes it a little bit easier. All right, so let's do the last one. Then we'll put on our grape topping. And like I mentioned before, this makes for a really nice holiday appetizer, I think. All right, so all you do is you just place it right on top. And if you have extra time, you can just, cut some up and, put it right on top. You go ahead and set this on the plate. Great. Let me just do 2 more. And I think when you make this great mixture ahead of time, it probably would last in the refrigerator, I think, for maybe, 3 or 4 days or so. But I probably would not store in the refrigerator with the goat cheese and the grape stuff. I would do it right before you're about to serve it, because it might get a little bit soggy. All right, let's put that one and let's do our last one. There we go. All right, so this is our California grape and goat cheese crostinis. So again, super easy to make, a lot of flavor, and especially with the California grapes, very delicious. So you can see right here, and very colorful, don't you think? I think those are really pretty. I always think anything with grapes, with the green, the red, gives a really nice color to any meal. All right, I just want to share my screen one last time, and then we'll go to Q&A. So I just wanted to mention some upcoming classes. So for tomorrow, Joni is going to be doing table talk with the chef for the Philadelphia Union. On Thursday, Joni is going to be doing the trending topics class with stuffed with ideas. So turkey and sides simplified, which kind of getting a head start for the holidays. And then like what I mentioned before with Jenna, she's going to go talk all about California grapes. So definitely, if you haven't registered for it, do so. It's going to be a really interesting class. You get to learn all about the California grapes. All right, and with that, I'm going to stop recording. So thank you and take care.